Someone has a near-death experience that has a profound impact on their life. Whether on their own or by falling down a YouTube rabbit hole, they come to the assertion that this experience is irrefutable evidence of their God or an afterlife. But even if the experience was legitimately beyond biology, what would it actually prove? Surprisingly, not that a deity or an afterlife exists. This is a classic case of argument from ignorance, driven by intuitive reasoning and confirmation bias, where an unexamined experience is mistaken for verified truth. Near-death experiences are profound, but they are not proof of the divine. They reveal more about the brain under distress than about the nature of any deity or afterlife. To claim otherwise is to confuse emotional power with epistemological rigor. If near-death experiences are proof of heaven, why haven't any of them ever revealed a new scientific truth or solved a mystery no one else could? We don't let dreams count as evidence. We don't let hallucinations guide our science. So why do we treat near-death experiences differently? And to be clear, the brain is still active in 100% of all NDE scenarios. In this conversation, we're going to take a hard, honest look at what's really happening when the brain gets close to the edge. So what are near-death experiences? Near-death experience refers to a psychological experience reported by individuals who were either clinically dead or extremely close to death, often involving sensations like tunnels, lights, out-of-body perspectives, or encounters with other beings. Now, near-death does not equal actual death. Actual death is biological death. It means irreversible cessation of brain function. Near-death experiences occur during temporary loss of function, not permanent death. This distinction matters because the experience happens while the brain is still operating, albeit abnormally, which likely means that everything you're experiencing during a near-death experience is indeed a product of your brain. Now, another question we have to ask here is, would a near-death experience qualify as evidence for God? Like, what counts as evidence for God? Before evaluating near-death experiences, we need a clear set of criteria for what would actually qualify as evidence of a God or an afterlife. Philosophically and scientifically, such evidence would need to meet the following standards. Number one, consistency. The phenomenon must present similar recognizable patterns across individuals, times, and cultures. It also needs replicability. It should recur under similar conditions, not just once in unpredictable circumstances, and it should be subject to independent verification. The experience or outcome must be verifiable by third parties, not just the individual who claims to have experienced it. And then also distinguishability. It must be clearly distinguishable from known psychological, neurological, or cultural explanations. And of course, let's not forget falsifiability. There must be a way to test it and potentially disprove it. Do near-death experiences meet these standards? In short, no. NDEs are subjective and highly varied. There is no consistent narrative or structure that emerges from them. Some report peace, others terror, some light, others darkness. They're always culturally biased. Christians tend to see Jesus or heaven, Hindus may see Yama, and Buddhists might describe reincarnation-related imagery. NDEs are also neurologically explainable. The phenomena are closely tied to oxygen deprivation, temporal lobe stimulation, and neurochemical surges. And of course, they're unverifiable. No one else can confirm what the experiencer saw or felt. There's no external data. So what would actually count as evidence for God? An example of what could qualify as compelling evidence would be predictive divine communication. A deity consistently communicates specific, verifiable knowledge that could not have otherwise been known, predicting the discovery of DNA with details centuries before, or global shared revelations. People from all over the world independently report the same detailed encounter with a God that they had no prior exposure to. And I think the one that we're all waiting on is a violation of natural laws. Observable and verifiable events that consistently defy physics and biology attributed directly and demonstrably to a God would qualify as evidence. These would meet the criteria for consistency, distinguishability, and verification, unlike near-death experiences. So what would count as evidence of an afterlife? Cross-verified communication from the deceased? A deceased individual sharing specific unknown details with multiple unrelated people that can later be confirmed. Or instrumentally detected consciousness. Brain activity or intentional responses detected in a clinically dead person verified by external instruments. Or even repeatable post-death observation. An individual verifiably sees and reports events or data while clinically dead, repeated by others in similar conditions. Again, these would need to be replicable, falsifiable, and independently confirmed. So what if a near-death experience truly does go beyond biology? Well, even in a hypothetical case where a near-death experience could not be explained by biology or psychology, it still wouldn't prove that a God exists, that a specific religion is true, or that an afterlife exists in any meaningful or permanent sense. Jumping from a mysterious experience to a theological conclusion is not just a logical error, it's ethically irresponsible. And yet it's rampantly common in politics, religion, and culture because it offers emotional closure and social validation. A legitimate anomaly is not a confirmation of a belief, it's a prompt to ask deeper questions. So a guiding principle that I use is never give yourself permission to know that which you have not actually tried to know. This rule protects us from lazy certainty. It reminds us that certainty requires effort, inquiry, and the humility to say, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out. So in that case, what would a legitimate near-death experience actually prove? Well, let's assume, for the sake of this conversation, that a near-death experience is veridical, meaning the person genuinely experienced something during clinical death that cannot be fully explained by existing biological models. That would make it a legitimate anomaly, but not necessarily a validation of religious or spiritual beliefs. So what it would prove is that the individual had a profound conscious experience under extreme physiological distress. That consciousness itself may be more resilient than previously understood, or that our definitions of clinical death need refining, or that our models of how the brain generates conscious experience are incomplete. What it would not prove is that a God exists, that the afterlife described in a specific religion is real, that what the person saw, whether it's a being, a place, or a message, was objectively true or universally acceptable. It would not prove that the experience came from outside the brain, rather than from some unknown or lesser understood internal process. Experience does not equal reality. This is a foundational epistemological distinction. A near-death experience, no matter how vivid or life-altering, does not prove that what was seen or felt corresponds to external, independent reality. The brain is fully capable of generating entire worlds of emotion, imagery, and sensation that feel real, but are not verifiable or external. A great analogy for this is dreams. People dream of flying, talking to the dead, or seeing lost loved ones. These dreams are emotionally powerful, but we do not consider them evidence of actual flight, resurrections, or visitations from another realm. There's also hallucinations. Individuals with schizophrenia may see or hear entities and experience full conversations. The experience is real to them, but not indicative of supernatural entities. We must consider the implications of consciousness under duress. This is a neurological frontier. If a legitimate near-death experience were somehow shown to occur during a period of no detectable brain function, it would challenge current understandings of consciousness. But even then, it would raise neurological questions before theological ones. Is our technology missing subtle brain activity? Does consciousness have a layered structure we don't yet understand? Are there thresholds of perception or awareness that survive trauma? These are fascinating frontiers of cognitive science, not confirmations of theology. There's a common human tendency to label the unknown as divine. But just because something is mysterious does not mean it is mystical. The moment we assign meaning to a mystery without first understanding the mechanisms, we move from inquiry to ideology. This is why it's critical to resist the leap from something strange happened to therefore it must be God. Instead, we should say, something strange happened. Let's find out what this tells us about the mind, culture, and consciousness. Even in the most extreme, unexplainable near-death experience case, it's data not doctrine. It's a doorway to more questions, not a destination of certainty. It may suggest human consciousness is more complex than we thought, but it doesn't grant us the right to claim knowledge of God's heavens or eternal truths. Now let's unpack what the experts say. When we move beyond anecdote and into the realm of serious research, the evidence suggests that near-death experiences are brain-based phenomena that arise under extreme psychological or physiological stress. Let's get a better understanding of neuroscience, psychology, and cross-cultural studies without pseudo-intellectual speculation to explain what's happening during a near-death experience. The temporal lobes are closely tied to memory, emotion, and perception. When stimulated by trauma, epilepsy, or lack of oxygen, they can produce out-of-body experiences, religious hallucinations, and distortions in time perception. Olaf Blank and fellow researchers demonstrated that electrical stimulation of the temporoparietal junction in the brain can induce out-of-body experiences in awake, conscious individuals. The body schema and self-location can be experimentally manipulated via the stimulation of the temporoparietal cortex. That's in Nature, volume 419 of 2002. There's also hypoxia, oxygen deprivation. During trauma, the brain is deprived of oxygen. This leads to tunnel vision, bright lights, or seeing God, or even sensations of floating or peace. Limpert, Bauer, and Schmidt in 1994 found that fighter pilots subjected to high G-forces, causing cerebral hypoxia, often experience near-death experience-like symptoms, including euphoria, tunnel vision, and detachment from the body. A physiological basis exists for tunnel vision, feelings of floating, and even spiritual hallucinations under hypoxic conditions. That's from The Lancet, volume 344, 1994. And we must understand the role of neurochemical storms in our brain. As the brain begins to shut down, it floods itself with endorphins, serotonin, and DMT-like compounds that reduce pain, create feelings of euphoria and transcendence. It also distorts time and space. David Nichols and Rick Strassman have explored the role of endogenous DMT, produced in small quantities in the pineal gland, in creating dreamlike mystical states during extreme physiological events. While DMT theories are still speculative and not fully confirmed in humans at near-death levels, they remain part of ongoing neurochemical research. But there are also psychological dynamics at work, such as cognitive dissonance and narrative construction. When the mind encounters trauma that it cannot process, it may construct a comforting narrative to reduce distress. It may even fill in memory gaps with symbolic imagery rather than accurate data. This explains why near-death experiences often feel so meaningful. They're the brain's emergency meaning-making process. People tend to experience what they already believe or expect based on their culture and worldview. Christians see Jesus or heaven, Buddhists report reincarnation themes, atheists may report voids, peaceful detachment, or simply darkness. Kelleher in 2009 compiled international near-death experience data and found significant cross-cultural variation that aligned closely with local religious and mythological beliefs. Near-death experiences are not universal in content, but are deeply colored by cultural background. This is from the Sociology of Health and Illness, volume 31 in 2009. After the experience, people often reinterpret it through the lens of their existing beliefs. A Christian sees their experience as proof of Jesus. A New Ager sees it as proof of the soul's journey. An atheist may see it as proof of consciousness without a body. No matter what was experienced, people tend to find evidence to support what they already believed. Humans are evolved to detect patterns, even when none exist, and to assume agency behind those patterns. So lights become heaven. A feeling of presence becomes God is with me. A shadow becomes a being or a God. This is the same mechanism behind seeing faces in clouds or hearing voices in white noise, attributing intent to random events. The brain would rather believe a lie that saves it from harm than take the risk of a truth it doesn't understand. Many near-death experiences occur in contexts where data cannot be collected in real time, making them retrospective reports with no external validation. This creates a feedback loop where the most dramatic stories become cultural lore, while less dramatic ones are forgotten. Understanding what's actually happening during a near-death experience isn't meant to diminish the personal impact of the experience, but mistaking a brain event for divine proof leads us into dangerous epistemological territory. When we stop interrogating experience and start deifying it, we sacrifice inquiry for comfort, and that's the birthplace of superstition. Respect the experience, yes, but don't worship it. What we often see at work here is the role of incredulity, intellectual arrogance, and mental lethargy. It's tempting to treat emotionally powerful experiences, especially near-death experiences, as self-evident proof of something greater. But that temptation reveals more about our mental habits than it does about objective reality. At the heart of this confusion lies three major obstacles: incredulity, intellectual arrogance, and mental lethargy. Incredulity isn't insight, it's a limitation. When someone says, "I just can't imagine this not being God," this is not a profound reflection. It's a confession of imagination failure, an unwillingness or inability to consider alternate explanations. Incredulity feels like conviction, but it's often just a mask for limited information, lack of exposure to critical analysis, and over-reliance on emotion as evidence. In truth, the fact that you can't imagine another explanation says nothing about whether another explanation exists. It only exposes the boundaries of your own understanding. Intellectual arrogance often masquerades as certainty. Those who quickly declare near-death experiences as proof of God often aren't drawing from deep study or empirical reasoning. More often, they're defending a belief they're afraid to interrogate, projecting confidence to avoid cognitive dissonance, and mistaking the power of an experience for the truth of an interpretation. This arrogance isn't always loud or aggressive. It can show up as polite dismissal of questions, spiritual platitudes, or subtle condescension towards skeptics. But at its core, it is deeply anti-intellectual, and more dangerously, it's anti-honest. Now let's talk about mental lethargy, the silent epidemic. Critical thinking is exhausting. It demands time, discomfort, confrontation with uncertainty, and the humility to be wrong. Most people aren't trained or incentivized to do that work. The result is mental lethargy, preferring familiar myths over hard-earned knowledge, repeating inherited ideas instead of interrogating them, and confusing belief with understanding. Intelligence is not static. It must be intentionally built through a lifelong commitment of converting curiosity into clarity. This isn't just about IQ, it's about mental fitness, and most minds, like unused muscles, are too flabby to lift anything heavy. When people mistake emotional power for epistemic validity, they substitute feeling for thinking, reward simplicity over inquiry, and elevate personal comfort over shared truth. This isn't just a personal error, it has cultural consequences. Religions, conspiracy theories, political ideologies, and superstitions all thrive in environments where incredulity goes unchallenged and arrogance is mistaken for insight. We are often more persuaded by what feels true than by what actually is true. And that's why the ethical call to think, truly think, matters more now than ever. Near-death experiences are powerful, personal, and often transformative, but they are not proof of what lies beyond death. At best, they reveal what the brain does under extreme stress, not what happens when the brain is gone. To mistake these moments for maps of the afterlife is to confuse emotion with evidence and experience with reality. Until an experience occurs after a person is actually dead and can be verified beyond the one who had it, it cannot tell us what happens after death, only what it feels like to come close. Thank you for joining me in today's conversation. If this was impactful for you, get today's guide on Windows Shop. The link is in the description. And if you're interested in building local community where you are, tap in. That link is also in the description. And then, of course, visit dldd.us to learn more about me and the community ecosystem that I'm aiming to co-create with DLDD World Group, Bridge City Global, Windows Shop, and that list literally goes on. If you want to financially support the channel, the content, the community, or the creator, that's me, check out the ways to support links in the description below. Thank you all for tuning in today, and until next time, keep rising.